Good morning, everyone. Hey, I am Ernestine with Spirit Wind Healing Ministries and Apostolic Training Center located in Peoria, Arizona. And it is, what time is it? It's 8:30. It is the 21st of September, and tomorrow begins the Jewish New Year. And I believe that we are making a transition from a coddled mindset in the church to one of war. I think that there's been a great awakening, and I'm not joining voices with everybody else. There have been some amazing, very truthful prophetic words out there, and I'm really excited to hear that not only have the prophets been hearing that we are entering into revival, and sorry, you're going to hear some noise background. I am right in the, what do they call it? The air flight pathway. Anyway, but I was thinking this morning, what could I say to the church? We usually meet on Saturday nights. Well, we do meet on Saturday nights, but we're actually transitioning in the 1st of October to Sunday morning. So this is going to be really new for us. We've been meeting on Saturday nights for 10 years. And but God has said to move. And so we're moving. I don't exactly know why we're moving dates and times, but we're moving dates and times. Oh, I got some ideas, but I'm not going to get into that. But anyway, I want to talk about the persecution of the church. And it's an ugly word. Nobody wants to talk about persecution. But I think the reality of it is when we saw this man of God named Charlie Kirk get shot, many of you did not even know who he was. You didn't follow him. You found out about him after he had been murdered. And that's I think that was part of it, that God was going to use this to wake up everyone. And everyone that had ears to hear could begin to hear. Everyone that has eyes to see can begin to see. And so not only is there awakening, reformation, revival, spirit upon the earth, there are those sons and daughters of God that have been laboring for a long time for revival. And I'm not talking a weekend revival. I'm talking about an experiential moment with the Lord that changes us so deeply that we go out and change our atmosphere. And that's really what revival is about. You get awakened, you get changed, and then you go out and change your atmosphere. You change your family. You love them like you couldn't love them before because you're loving them with the love of God. So what do you do when persecution comes? What do you do if persecution were to knock at your door? What would you do if God called you to be a voice to the nation, or if God called you to go out and stand against the lies and indoctrination of your children, of whatever community of deception is coming at you? What if he called you to be a voice, but you were afraid of persecution? You were afraid of being ousted. You were afraid of being rejected. You were afraid of being beheaded, murdered. What if that was something you were called to do? How would you face your fears? There's a lot of places in the book of Acts, and I was looking at a couple of things afresh. I was thinking about this experience when it's in chapter 12 of Acts, and I want to share that with you. So if you got a moment, I'm already like 3.5 minutes in, so I probably lost a lot of people. But if you have 10 more minutes to sit with me this morning, it's a Sunday morning. People are gathering here in Arizona at the stadium for Charlie Kirk's memorial. We are not going. We are going to be on the wall praying and watching and standing for Arizona. We are pastors here, me and my husband, in Arizona, and we are watchmen. So we want to be on the wall with some of our intercessors and team members, and and a lot of them were planning on going, but God has put the brakes on that. And the reason for that is a lot of people want to go be a part of something because it's historical, it's history. But I want to tell you, that is not God. God doesn't tell us, go stand over there because history is going to be making. He tells you to go out there and make history, or to be a part of history, or to even be behind what is being made in history, that you would be, the intercessor. There are a lot of intercessors that stood behind the preacher, the man or woman of God that was plowing the fields, plowing the path, I should say, for that man or woman of ministry. And they weren't the ones on the front lines. They were behind the scenes interceding. And so we're interceding behind the scenes. But I want to look at this persecution thing. It says in verse 1 of chapter 12 of Acts, now about that time, And I wish I could had time to go back. I would love to go back and just show you all that time that they're talking about, but I can't do that. So Herod the king stretched out his hand to harass some from the church. Basically, he stretched out his power. He used his power, to his political power, to harass the church. Then he killed James, the brother of John, with the sword. James was a disciple. And because he saw it pleased the Jews, he proceeded further to seize Peter also. Now it was during the days of unleavened bread, so it was a high holy day. The political powers that be had harassed and began to harass the church at a higher level than they were already being harassed. Then they put Peter in jail, they put him in prison, and they put him in, and they delivered him to 4 squads of soldiers to keep him, intending to bring him before the people after Passover. So we're in the Passover season. Peter's been arrested. But it says here in verse 5, but constant prayer was offered to God for him by the church. This is really important because the church was praying. So then there's this crazy encounter where this angel shows up and he strikes Peter and tells him, get up, get up. Peter was sleeping or resting. He's bound in chains. It looks like he could be meeting his demise. He could be killed like James was. But the angel of the Lord stands up and hits him and says, get up. Let's go. There's so much more for you, Peter. This is not your demise. You will not end here. And Peter gets up and he's obedient. Well, this angel takes him out into the city where the gates open up for them. So nobody's there to open the gates. They automatically open up for them. Angels can automatically open doors for you. They can open gates that have been locked. They can break chains that have kept you bound. And so this happens. This happens to Peter. But the interesting thing, and the point I want you to get, is they're praying. The church is under persecution. James has been murdered. This king, this political person has put out their power towards the church too. This has happened already in America, but you didn't catch it in 2020. A lot of people did not understand this was persecution to the church. We couldn't worship, but you could go to brothels and you could go to bars and you could do things like that, but you weren't allowed to open your mouth to worship. Your mouth was gagged in the decade of pay, by the way. This is the decade of pay, and we're halfway through it. And the new year will go into, I think it's 86, 25, 86. Yeah, not 25. Anyway, the last digit being 6, so we're in sync right now with our 2025. We'll roll over in January to 2026. And God's calendar, or the Hebrew calendar, I shouldn't say God's calendar, but Hebrew calendar is already switched over starting tomorrow. Why am I telling you that? Well, for one, we're still in the year of pay, the decade of pay, which is the mouth, which is to speak. I find it very interesting that not only did the decade of pay start out with the mouth gagging us, that we couldn't speak, we weren't allowed to worship in some states, not here in Arizona, but they tried that, it didn't work. There was just all these stipulations on you being able to speak because germs might come out of you or something. And anyway, so going forward, I just went off on a rabbit trail. Stay with me. I'm 8 minutes in. I hope you've caught something. I'm going to wrap it right here because you're going to like this. So Peter's the angel has helped him escape, and he goes to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. And as Peter knocked at the door of the gate, a girl named Rhoda answered the door, and she recognized Peter's voice. Because of her gladness, she did not open the gate, but ran in and announced that Peter is standing before the gate. But they didn't believe her. They said to her, "You are beside yourself." Yet she kept insisting that it was so. So they said, "It is his angel." Now Peter continued knocking, and when they opened the door and saw him, they were astonished. I want to say this. What astonished them? What kind of spirit were they in prayer? They were praying for Peter, but were they praying in a spirit of fear? Were they praying that they wouldn't be the next to be shot, beheaded, killed, put in jail, locked up? What were they praying? Because they obviously didn't have, there was something missing in their prayers to be not believing that Rhoda was telling them, hey, Peter's at the door. Hey, the very thing you guys are praying for, a supernatural escape, it happened. Peter's standing at the gate. And they're like, no, it's his angel. Well, if they think it's his angel, I'm wondering, why would they use that phrase? Do they think that he died? Why? I don't understand why Peter's angel would come unless they meant Peter's spirit. I just don't really understand what that meant. So I'm not going to pretend I haven't studied that piece of it that deep. But I can get this part. They're together in prayer in verse 5. And in verse 15, they're denying the answered prayer. they're saying, you're beside yourself. You're crazy, lady. He's not there. It's got to be its angel. And then they see him and they're astonished. And the next thing that happens is Peter motions to them with his hand to be quiet. I don't know what's going down. I don't know what's going to happen. And he told them and declared to them how the Lord had brought him out of the prison. And then he said, go tell these things to James and to the brethren. And he departed and went to another place. And then, of course, there was no small stir around the soldiers, having let him get by and all that kind of stuff. But what I really wanted to encourage you with is that in persecution, you're going to gather in prayer, because that's what we do as a Christian nation, or Christian people. That's what we're doing now with Charlie Kirk. We're not gathering to loot and to kill and to murder and to steal and to hate. We're gathering for God to move on the earth, because we see it in a very different light than when people are non-believers and they see things in the light of an opportunity to be violence or to steal, or what can they get from whatever this situation is. We see it as an opportunity of, what are you doing, God, in this? This man, Charlie Kirk, was murdered. What are you doing, God, in this? And of course, praying for his beautiful wife and his children and family and loved ones and all of them. But what are you doing, God? And how long do we mourn? Because there's a season for mourning, then there's a season for battle. And we can only mourn for so long. Now, Charlie Kirk's wife is different, but us as the church have to get up and move. We cannot let this sit us down. We cannot let this stop our prayers. And we must pray with faith. I'm really challenged right now, because I see that the spirit of revival is upon the earth now. We are finally entered in. I cannot personally let go of that. I must pray and fast and wrestle for what God wants to bring to this nation, and so should you. All of us. I challenged our church last night that they would take one day a week of prayer and fasting and pray for me and my husband and the church that we're leading, and pray for revival. Pray for God's will to be done here on earth as it is in heaven. And I don't know how many will answer that. We got some really awesome prayer people, prayer warriors at our church. So I'm hoping that they all will, but I don't usually challenge people like this, but I feel like the Lord is saying, if you don't prod them, they won't move. Pastor, preacher, leader, Bible study leader, prayer warrior, whatever, if you don't prod them, they won't move. Your rod and your staff are of the Spirit of God, and you must use it to move the people of God that you have been given stewardship over, whether it's your family, husband, wife, whoever it is. We must prod them to move. So let me encourage you today, as the nation is gathering for one final day of mourning around Charlie Kirk, because after this, the trumpets will blow. And literally in Israel tomorrow, trumpets are going to blow. Something crazy, awesome, and a little bit scary is happening on the earth, and you want to be a part of it. So don't miss out. If you can't be on at the stadium today, if God has restricted you to your prayer closet, remember, you are still part of the body of Christ, and you are doing his will and helping to usher in his angels and his presence. So God bless you on your Jesus journey. See you on the next video.